All right. We're going to roll over into the negative side of the model with a little fresh crack. And we have Joseph from Quality Stats, at Quality Stats on Twitter. I'm going to assume that, sole proprietor and owner of Quality Stats. Yeah. So make sure you go follow him, and you got a Substack that you can go check out with so much great information on it, and a great follow on Twitter. So make sure you're checking all that out. So now, unfortunately, we're going to go to the part where people are going to be yelling at you in the comments.
I can take it.
They're going to be yelling in the must buys too. They like to yell, but hey, get it in, man, get it in.
Yeah. All right. Let's start off with one that I've just gotten crushed for this entire time. As far as the rookie process goes, how is your model feeling about Travis Hunter?
Well, it doesn't love him as much as the public loves him. And the model, it doesn't hate Travis Hunter, right? The model is not offended by Travis Hunter in any way, but the model thinks that Travis Hunter is a good wide receiver, which is not bad. Right. But the model does not think he's the 103, right? The 103 is a bit expensive for him, in my opinion. He scores really close to like Jaden Higgins. Like those are very similar players in my model. Higgins doesn't have quite the level of draft capital that Hunter has. And so, in our dynasty rankings, you can bump him up a little higher, but it's like Travis Hunter isn't special by any means at the wide receiver position, at least according to the model. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a negative way, but he's just good, right? He's a good wide receiver. And I think that compounds, right, with the fact that Jacksonville may not dedicate themselves to him being the wide receiver, right?
I don't know. Generous, deal. He just defined Travis Hunter's whole entire career for him. Just one sentence after the draft.
That it compounds even more when you have Brian Thomas Jr. on the other side catching passes, and when he gets a target, Travis Hunter's not getting a target, right? And there's a lot of discussion on if Trevor Lawrence is even good, right? So there's a lot of things that to me do not scream 103. And not that I think he could have a successful career. It's just, I don't think he's going to have a Calvin Johnson or Malik Neighbors kind of career.
Yeah.
So
I think he's, for some reason, automatically jumped from being like, hey, he's a pretty good wide receiver prospect. And there's some things when you watch him where his body movement and ball skills and all those kind of things are pretty high. And all of a sudden he was Justin Jefferson for some reason. Right. And I don't know why we made that jump so quickly. Like, we can't just let anybody live at like a pretty good level and then say, hey, there's room for improvement here. But we went all the way up to the ceiling being Justin Jefferson, which kind of caught me off guard and was a little wild and really caught me off guard that everyone really just jumped him to the front of the line of saying, hey, he's wide receiver 1 and or wide receiver 2. And that people are just willing to just say, hey, it's all a done deal. And that he is for sure locked in to be just full-time receiver, especially at, again, I think he wants to play on the other side of the ball. So when you weigh in like wear and tear and usage, like I know he's a good kid. I know he puts in the work, but like, he's also not a huge person.
And it's different at the NFL level. It is different, right? You aren't at Colorado anymore. And I don't mean that in like, again, a negative way. It's more of, you're not at Colorado anymore, right? It's harder. And if he were to dedicate himself to wide receiver, put on 25 pounds and really just be a wide receiver 1, I could get behind a better, higher ADP, but even 103 at that point still would be a little high for me. I think that's, again, he's a good wide receiver. I don't think that he's bad, but it's just, I don't think that he's the next Malik Neighbors.
Right. Yeah, no, that's kind of my summation too. Like I think it's just a little too high and a little aggressive for me. And it's nothing negative about Travis Hunter for me either. I think he's a good player and a great person seemingly. And I like those things. Like that would be a score for me, would be like, what kind of a human being is this and how much does he want to work? And this guy's seemingly wants to be a great human being and work. But that being said, like, which meetings is he going to be in? Who's he practicing with? All those things just weigh into being like, man, it just seems like you're putting a lot of weight to drafting him at the 102 and 103. And that's a vulnerable spot that you're potentially in if you're a dynasty owner drafting at that position.
And not to mention the real world implications of the trade, right? The Jaguars traded up to the 102 to take a wide receiver and a corner.
Right.
They didn't trade up to the 102 to take a wide receiver by himself. They wanted not just one thing.
Right. Yeah.
They want to start him in their IDP leagues.
Right. No,
IDP. Yeah, no question about it. He's one overall. He might be just a startup one overall. Yeah, like
you take him over Genty in IDP, I guess. I mean, put a wide receiver in your corner spot.
I honestly have no idea. I guess I don't know. I have no IDP experience.
Or interest,
right.
I don't either, but I assume if you get points for both offense and defense, he needs to be drafted everywhere.
Yeah. All right, let's go to another higher first round guy with capital. Let's talk about Matthew Golden.
Do you love the mock draft? Are you interested in helping us update our monthly ADP? If so, be sure to join the free Discord channel and or sign up for a free Patreon membership to become part of the Pleasure Chess community. Better mock it up so you don't fuck it up.
I have a hard time placing him and figuring out what I want to do because, again, he kind of in the Travis Hunter vein, like he started off as this thing where you were like, yeah, I like him at this ADP, like back end of the second. And now he's charged all the way up to, a first round pick or the wraparound on the, 112, 2-1. And while I like parts and pieces of his game, it just feels like we've really kind of crowned him really quickly with seeing limited production on the field. So I can also understand why the model wouldn't love Golden because of, not a whole lot of huge opportunity. And I guess the argument would be, well, he should have gotten more opportunity if he's this good, maybe.
Yeah. And he is being just, carried by his PFF big board ranking in the table that we've been looking at. He was ranked 21st in the PFF big board ranking. And that's just how PFF rated him, right? And that is dragging his score up from the ashes. And he also got the draft capital, which would, if this model had draft capital, would drag his score up. But his career score is pretty awful, right? He's in the 30th percentile of having a good career. I think Scott Barrett tweeted it out at one point, but I think he had 4 good games his whole career, right? We're pretty much basing his upside off of 4 good games that he had. And
the problem is the public saw all 4 of them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what really, when you have those prime time, we talk about it all the time in the NFL, when you're on those prime time games, it really, escalates the value even more. And then every Matthew Golden game was an important game for Texas seemingly, which is a good time to be great. Right.
Yeah.
But
other things matter, right? If you're doing nothing, if you're doing absolutely nothing against like North Texas or something, that matters, right? If you're not catching a pass, if you're just not doing anything, that does matter. And it's really about the holistic approach of a prospect and not just 4 games they played.
Right. And then on top of that, had the 4 games and then came out, blew up the combine. All those things in public perception are going to go, oh man, Matthew Golden, and then the draft capital. So everything really weighting in his favor as far as, how overall the public might view him. Model says the old Lee Corso, not so fast.
Yeah. And I think that not to berate the Matthew Golden point, but if I go through how I grouped the main features of my model, he has a bad career score. I rated it bad. He has a bad route versatility. He has what I would consider fine explosiveness. He has a bad wins above average, meaning bad, holistic PFF grade. And he has fine relative athleticism. It's not really, it's like he ran fast. Don't get me wrong, he ran fast, but his overall athleticism did not come back as elite, right? Mm-hmm. And all of those combined, he is being just pulled from the ashes, with his draft capital and with his PFF ranking.
Yeah, I feel like this is one where I think a lot of the bigger, heavy, lean analytic guys are kind of out on Golden. But again, I think everything broke right for the public to really carry the ADP up there. And then, you also do have the Packers who don't spend a first round draft pick on wide receivers often, which that sparks my interest, right?
Pick them good.
Almost more than anything.
Yeah, agreed.
If you can get the target, if you can kind of be the leader in the clubhouse and the target share for the Packers with what he could do potentially, like he's not necessarily like the thwarter of tackles, but if you give him a little seam, your run after the catches can be really good because he does have really good speed in a straight line, right?
Yeah. And I think that we talk about burden. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I think that at the Packers, even though the talent may not be quite what Chicago's is as far as their perimeter weapons and everything, there's still mouths to feed, right? I still think that like Jaden Reed's going to be getting passes thrown to him, right? Dontavian Wicks, it still exists, right? There's going to, like, Romeo Doubs is still there for now.
Yeah.
There's still players.
Tucker Kraft has emerged. We didn't see Musgrave last year a whole lot, and Josh Jacobs is still elite.
Yep. There are players to feed there too. And I think that's why, like, if it's between Matthew Golden and Luther Burden, I'm taking Burden 10 out of 10 times. It's not even close.
And Higgins, right?
And Higgins. Yes, both.
Okay. And Trey Harris?
Trey Harris too. Yeah. I'd say all three. I like all three more than I like Matthew Golden. I think that after those three are gone, if I was like forced into it, I'm okay with Matthew Golden, I guess, but I'd rather have all three.
Right.
Yeah. Egbuka's going to be gone, I think, long before any of those, but yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people are kind of on that turn, and I think a lot of people are deciding between Golden, Egbuka, and Burden. And for you, it'd go Burden, Egbuka, Golden. I'd
say, I'd like to split my exposure between Egbuka and Burden. Like I as much as I am confident in Burden, I am also a realist, right? There's some level of probability that Burden will succeed, and there's some level of probability that Egbuka will succeed. And I would like to split that exposure a little bit.
Gotcha.
Looking for more FFD? Get access to our proprietary ADP, our dynasty rankings, the rookie draft kit, and extra shows every single week. Head over to patreon.com/the FF Dynasty and hit us with that $5 holler.
All right, let's keep it moving. Kyle Williams has gotten a lot of run on this show because of a of a show that we did here, and we all like Kyle Williams a good bit. He was probably one of the most surprising people that were on the kind of fade list for me from the model perspective, because I can understand Golden some, I can understand Travis Hunter some, and I can understand the last guy on here some, but Kyle Williams kind of definitely stuck out to me as I think you got some explaining to do, pal.
I don't mind.
Shev's not here because you be getting bricks.
I'd love to talk to Shev about it at some point, but Kyle Williams scores a 19th percentile in my model, which is really bad, right? It is not exactly good. It is it's like 7th round draft capital, right? That's where he falls about. And it's mostly due because of his career score, right? He has a pretty rough career score. I recently had it pulled up to talk about the seasons that he had. But he really just doesn't have a phenomenal career. His explosiveness was good, but not great, right? He had solid explosiveness, 73rd percentile explosiveness in my model, which is good. And his RVI is pretty solid, his route versatility index. So and that's probably I think that we align a lot on players with good route versatility index. And I'm glad, by the way, because that was my goal, right? Yeah. I wanted to make a statistic that, would kind of go with people that say watch the film and really watch these players and see how they do. So his route versatility is really good, right? It's an 83rd percentile route versatility. His explosiveness is good. And so those are two things that if there were something to hang your hat on, those are the two things to hang your hat on. But his wins above average was 45th percentile, which is not great. That's below average, right? 50th percentile is the median here. And so he did not contribute to his team winning games as much as many other players, right? As well as having a very bad career score of an 18th percentile, right? And that was mostly driven by the fact, I'm pulling it up right now, but that was mostly driven by the fact that when he produced, let's see, I'm getting it pulled up. Yeah, so when he produced, he had a pretty rough junior year, according to my model, so 41st percentile junior year. When he was young, he did okay, but it was at group of 5, right? Really, his whole I guess career was some level of group of 5 competition. And just because of all that, he never really had anything outstanding to do with his career score. And that resulted in a pretty rough overall career score.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can understand it a little better now. I think, again, Kyle Williams was somebody who definitely on the film kind of jumped out. He kind of, again, the route versatility score would be the thing that really, I think, sold Kyle Williams for a lot of people, and was pretty good against press and getting off the jams and finding open space on the field there.
Yeah, so I'd like to add one more thing about this, just so it's understood a little bit more, especially by people that are kind of learning, or maybe this is their first time being exposed to some serious analytiks. But
that was a nice slight right there. That was a solid slight.
It wasn't a slight one bit. So Kyle Williams comes in as a 23rd percentile career strength of schedule, right? Meaning the teams he was playing against really weren't anything special.
Right.
He comes in with his yards per route run over expectation. So remember, this includes what were his teammates like, what were his opponents like, at 22nd percentile, right? These are bottom of the barrel numbers as far as who is he playing against and who's he playing with, and how much is he producing given that information.
Yeah.
And a lot of the information that I included. So I stripped conferences from this information. So like the SEC isn't necessarily the SEC in my data. The SEC is represented by how good the PFF grade was for the defenses, how large were the corners and secondary players. So like what were their weights, what were their heights, stuff like that. So like PFF grades, weight and height is kind of how I derived good defenses and conferences and stuff. It's a little hard to derive, but that was the basic idea. He comes in with a below 25th percentile for his opponents in that regard. His teammate quality was 27th percentile. And with all of that information, right, with all of the people he played with and the people that he played against, he still produced well below average. And so that's what his core of his issue is that he never really played against anyone special, or I should say he didn't consistently play against any special teams. And he didn't consistently produce against not that special.
So I do have some individual stats to correlate that he crushed in 100 percentile missed forced tackles and explosive plays, but the competition. Right?
So would he have to very much overperform against the mediocre?
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
The fact that the career score is low is a big red flag.
Exactly. And that's the thing is that your level of competition matters. It really does. Like it is incredibly important in your future NFL success. And so if you're playing against teams that aren't, like if you're playing against players and teams that aren't good, like they're going to be future car salesmen, I don't care if you scored an 80-yard touchdown. It doesn't really matter. Right. But if you do that every single time you go out there, well, now there might be something to that. Right. If you do that on every route, well, now come talk to me. Right.
Okay. So A.O. Manor would be preferred over Kyle Williams for you?
I think that they are, because of A.O. Manor's draft capital, like in the current, like pre-draft, yes, no doubt about it. Pre-draft, 100%. Post-draft, I am at least thinking about it a lot more. And I think that, now that like Kyle Williams ended up in a pretty solid situation. I think that's an important thing here, right?
Right.
He ended up in a good situation. He has Drake May at quarterback, who I think is going to take a big step forward. He's one of the quarterbacks I'm really excited about. There's definitely an upside case for Kyle Williams, and I understand that. I just think his underlying profile just isn't anything special. If he were to succeed, he would be an outlier for succeeding. He would fall into an outlier territory.
Gotcha. So, somebody like Jalen Royals was his score a little, obviously going from Utah State and playing at like a military college or whatever it was before that. He kind of had a long road in. Is that all that working against him? And then obviously got a shortened, season this year, but before that was really on track to put up some pretty big numbers.
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick, but that is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get you off where you were at. But would Royals be somebody who would be a better example of performing well consistently against worse competition, or is that still not quite?
Well, yeah. So for example, Royals, he has, I don't give him a lot of credit for his first two seasons, right? But I do give him credit for his junior and senior season.
Yeah.
His 20, I have him at age 20 and age 21. There are some ages that I had to interpret. I don't have everyone's birthday. That's actually, if you look into like Dynasty Analytics, one of the funniest things is finding birthdays for everybody can be hard.
Tricky.
It really is. It gets tricky. But I have his junior season at a 75th percentile season score, which is pretty solid, and his senior season at 88th percentile. But the fact is he did those as a junior and a senior. And his earlier, when he was a freshman and sophomore, that was against significantly worse competition. And he didn't necessarily, he did well as a junior and senior, but he wasn't dominating like some other players in this class.
Yeah.
And that's what is in general, holding him back from being a truly elite player in the class.
Yeah.
That explosive score.
He is explosive though. And that's, to me, if I'm going to take bets on players later in the draft, when the lower I get, the more I care about explosive score, because to me that, I don't want to say it's the Puka stat or anything, but back, when I look at Puka's explosive score, he had a 99th percentile. Right. Nico Collins had a 99th percentile. When the player is going to be an outlier, it's usually because they're explosive.
Yeah.
So am I correct in saying that explosive score doesn't weigh any more than any of the other stats? You don't have weighted, you have multiple PCA groups, right? But they're all kind of equal when you're calculating this model?
I would not say that now. Okay. So I have a ton of different stats, and you can check them out if you do go to my Twitter and you go in the tweet I shared for the model, which is pinned on my Twitter. I share the Google sheet where all of these stats are available for free, right? And in that, all of those stats, I have a ton of different columns. I don't know how many there are exactly, 30 columns, let's just say. They get weighted by a mathematical model. Specifically, I used an elastic network is what it's called, right? I used an elastic network to weight all of these against each other and interactions between the two. So how does, if you're productive and you're explosive, that matters more than if you're just productive and you're not explosive, right? So these things weigh when they interact with each other, right? And that's something that's just vital to have in any kind of dynasty models, interacting these things that we care about, how much did you affect your team winning? How explosive are you? What was your athleticism? They all matter when they come together.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hey guys, be sure to give us a follow on the Twitters, Instagrams, and TikToks. Slide into those DMs and help us beat the algorithm up. Let's go. Back to the show.
Just to wrap up this kind of category of guys, I know Higgins performed really well, and obviously his teammate Jalen Knoll. Would you take Knoll over both Royals and Kyle Williams? I feel like the explosive score's got to be really good with Knoll.
Yeah. So Knoll does not have an amazing explosive score in my model.
Really?
Sorry about that. He has about a 30th percentile explosive score. So at least in my model, I would not rate him as highly. And so I just want this so that people know my explosive score includes a lot of different things, right? It's not, I guess.
It's not a rat score.
Right? Yeah. I think a lot of people think, that's explosiveness, right? The explosive score includes things like yak. It includes things like missed tackles forced. It includes things like deep contested catches. So that's an incredibly important explosive thing that I added. That is, I think we sometimes don't include that in explosive ratings when we think about players, but catching a ball 20 yards downfield as a contested catch, that is in my explosive score, right?
Jalen Royals.
I have things like beast yards. I take out what I call junk yards. Those are systematic yards that are a system is giving a player. So think a 5-yard little drag route where the coverage created you to be open. I take out throws like that using my PFF data. There's a lot of different things that go into the explosive score. And so sometimes our traditional definition of explosive might not fit what the model thinks is explosive.
Yeah. All right. So last guy on the fade list here is this one probably hurt my heart the most, but I can understand this one different than Kyle Williams. I can understand why the model probably didn't love him a ton. And we got Jack Bech coming in here as one of the model fades.
Yeah, he falls into, again, the very bad career score percentile. He gets a 27th percentile career score from me. And you know how we talked about Kyle Williams having a 22nd yards per route run over expectation career percentile score? Jack Bech has a 2 percentile. It's one of the worst in the entire draft class for the level of competition that he had on his team and the level of competition he was playing against. He did not get as many yards per routes he ran as the model would have liked to see, right? He fell into the 2nd percentile for that. He is being pulled up. He was fairly explosive, right? He was above average in his explosiveness. And he is being pulled up a little bit he has an above average route versatility index at 65th percentile. Again, I think y'all really like players with high RVIs, and I like to see that. That makes me feel a little validated.
Yeah.
And he has a pretty solid wins above average. But the things that are killing him are the fact that when he was on the field, he wasn't as productive as other players in similar situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how great his situation was. I mean, I think you could maybe, kind of look at, I don't know how Savion Williams grades out in this. But, I would 1,000 times over 1,000 would rather have Jack Bech than Savion. So I don't know how that goes for you. I don't think that was a fun.
Savion comes very low in my model. Yeah.
Okay.
Savion, my model hates Savion. 24th percentile. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And is that because there's some run plays in there, or is that?
So my model doesn't, at least in this regard, does not care about rush plays, right? Gotcha. I don't include any kind of rushing plays in my model, which that matters. That's an important human context for us to include, right? If you think he's going to be a running back or, part-time running back, include that in your evaluation. But Savion comes in with a 4th percentile career score and a 1 percentile yards per route run over expectation.
Gotcha.
My model absolutely hates him.
Jack Bech has got to be 100th percentile in heart score, right? He goes out there. I like the way he plays. He's got a very physical nature to his game. I think he was pretty explosive, and I think on the contested catch situation, I really like him in that area. But I think he's pretty. I think he's pretty athletic and has good size. Knows how to use it.
Every single thing you said is true in the model. It's just he wasn't productive at all times, right? The model does not like how unproductive he was. He scored a 26th percentile in his career score, and that the career score matters a lot, right? If you aren't productive, the model's going to really hurt you. And so you have to be pulled up by other things. And he still scored fine. He scored a 68th overall percentile.
Bad college nominator.
Yeah. It's just that he's not, I think that relative to his current ADP, it's a little shaky.
Yeah. And where was he? Was he
207?
Was he at LSU before that?
Yeah, I think he was I have him at LSU. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so
he might have been even playing tight end maybe at one point. I think.
So if I go through his season scores as a freshman, right? Yeah. So as a freshman, he had a 25th percentile. So he didn't do really that great. As a sophomore, he had a 9th percentile. And as a junior, he had an 11th percentile. Yeah. It was his senior year that I think has everyone a little interested, right? He had a 77th percentile season score, which is pretty solid. But after having 3 consecutive pretty bad ones, especially while you were young and with, the players he was playing against and the players on his team, it just overall his holistic view kind of didn't come to be.
Right. And, I think you're at LSU, you got to LSU one way or the other. So that's got to weigh into something. But then, you're not getting a whole lot of run with some of the players that have come through LSU wide receiver wise. So, that's where the context situation probably weighs in a little bit for me. And then you go to TCU and say, hey, was a fun offense a few years ago. And now I feel like TCU is a pretty bad program for the most part currently.
Yeah. And I think it's just critical to recognize that it's not that, Jack Bech isn't necessarily awful. He still scored a 68th percentile. That's above average, right? It's just that he isn't necessarily special. And if I'm taking him in a similar range to, say, Trey Harris or, Trey Harris is what, one pick above him? Give me Trey Harris all day long.
Oh,
it's
me
not
too.
even close.
1,000%.
All day long. It's not even close.
Yeah, Trey Harris is too far down, and I feel like Jack Bech is maybe a hair high there, like maybe 1 or 2 picks. But I think I like Jack Bech at like that 209 area a good bit. Yeah. I think Trey Harris and Higgins should both, like Scatterbo, should be down in that 2.8, 2.9 area as well. So yeah, no, I'm with it. What about a tight end to fade?
How would you like it if we paid your 2025 league entry fee? All you have to do is submit proof of a 5-star review from Spotify and or iTunes, click the link, and fill out the entry form. Multiple entries allowed. In fact, come into your friend's phone to quadruple your chances to win. Each losing entry will automatically roll over to the next most contest, all for your pleasure.
Tight end to fade. I hadn't prepared that super well, but I would say that probably the number one tight end that I would fade right now at current ADP, it might be Mason Taylor. Let me look at y'all's ADP real quick.
All right, I was
210, tight end 3.
So y'all have him at 210, and then where's
Arroyo's 311 or 3-1.
Yeah, I think that Mason Taylor for me is probably a smidge high. I would just strongly prefer Terrence Ferguson in that situation, and I would strongly prefer the upside of Harold Fannin. Even though Harold Fannin and Mason Taylor have very similar scores in my model, I think Fannin ended up in a very interesting situation where the Browns might not even use him at tight end, right? And
maybe not.
If they use him as like a power slot receiver or something like that, consider me very interested. And I think that there's a chance that happens. So to me, Mason Taylor falls below players like that. And I just think he might be a smidge high, just a smidge high. Nothing crazy, but I wouldn't touch him at his current ADP.
Well, okay, so this is my last question here is like year over year, you go through this, you do this, and then let's say Jack Bech or somebody, because that's who we were just talking about, comes in and really well overperforms what your model has put out there. Do you just say outlier situation, or do you try to reverse engineer that and
scrap the model?
Obviously not scrap the model.
Complete redesign.
Do you look at parts and pieces to redesign, or
So I at least think about it, right? I think about like, well, why did we miss him? Is he just a true outlier, right? Is he just an outlier? That's okay if it's just an outlier.
Sure.
I definitely don't spend too much time nitpicking statistics and trying to, create, was he born on a Tuesday? Did he eat dinner? What did he have for dinner last night? And create a list of 3 players that fit that criteria. I don't do that. I look back and I think, like Puka Nacua is a good example of, I think that I didn't have a good enough explosive score when I first made a model of Puka Nacua, he modeled out very well for me, right? And I streamed it from the heavens. But he still didn't score super well. He didn't score as well as I would have liked. And so looking back on it, I think I could have graded his explosiveness better back when he was coming out. And so if, say, Jack Bech were to be a massive success, I would at least consider what did I do wrong, right? What did I try and fail at doing and predicting this year? And if I can't think of anything immediate, well, then he's probably just an outlier, right? And outliers are okay because outliers, you know how we talked about the model coming up with numbers and how to weight everything? Mm-hmm. Well, that's what happens, right? So if Jack Bech succeeds, the models are going to account for that. They're going to account for the fact that, well, this player succeeded, so players with those characteristics are more likely to succeed than we previously thought.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And if enough players do that, you have a completely different model in the future.
Yeah. You got anything before we wrap this up?
Oh, how much time you got, buddy? No, I mean, I think
got
this
as
is a
much
lot
time as you want.
Yeah, and if for the people on YouTube, if you're watching this, I threw up this graph a couple times, but this is the graph of Joseph's qualities wide receiver model, and you've got his model on the x-axis, and then the average of their first 3 years in the NFL points per game, and then you draw a trend line. And as you can see, those dots kind of form an exponential, or it's a linear upward arc, right? And so what R squared is basically the average distance of each of those dots to the line. And the closer those dots get to the line, the more things correlate, right? And so 0.47 accounts for 47% of the variance of what correlates between his model and fantasy success in the NFL. So trying to normalize what R squared is, explain it correctly on my end over and over again, so I make sure I've got it. But a lot of times there's a disconnect. So there's a 47% chance he's going to succeed, and then that's not what this is. No. It's accounting for how much variance there is in the correlation of anything to one another, right? A dependent variable, which is the fantasy points per game, and the independent variable here, which would be the correlation score, right?
I think it's a very good explanation. Yeah.
Nailed it.
You did a pretty good job. Yeah.
Anything else you need to get off your chest? I mean, I guess the last question would be looking at your graph with all these, colors on it. The purple is obviously bad. The white's kind of average, and the green is good. what combination are we looking for? What are the where does your eye get drawn to of like this is indicative of something here on this?
Yeah, I think more green is better, right? You want green, you want green, and the purples are things that you should at least think about, and can you disprove them, right? So if you think Jalen Noel is an incredibly explosive player and that I'm just wrong, think that, right? That's okay to think. That is perfectly fine. But when whatever happens in the future happens, think about it, right? Think about like, well, man, I was wrong about it. And what was I wrong about? And that's how we make better. And that's how we become better fantasy football analysts.
I just forget every mistake I made and not acknowledge it and just move forward like I've never made a mistake before. This is how I go.
No Tesla on the graph here.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I think he slipped through the cracks. I think that I have a lot of different thresholds on different things that determine whether a player gets added at certain points in the process. And just for whatever reason during it, he didn't make the cut. And when I first published it, I didn't notice and I never went back to fix it. So
yeah.
Bad mullet score.
I think a lot of film guys like Armstrong over Tesla, or however you say his name.
Tesla's stock's going down, right? So
well, I don't know. His
different.
He's an interesting one. So I was.
I ADP. I think that he's a great player that's not on the model that I didn't predict, but based on just what I've seen, what I know, I've looked at his various different metrics and everything that's just not in the model. Crushed the combine. He's a big guy. He got a really good draft capital. I don't get why he's in my last two drafts. He didn't get drafted. He didn't get drafted in either of them. And
anomaly a lot of the times is we'll really get obsessed with draft capital, and I know there's different thresholds for different positions at different things or whatever, but like Tesla and Pat Bryant and Savion Williams, they all get okay landing spots and decent draft capital, and nobody really cares about them, it seems.
Yeah, which is I don't really get that, and I would say I'm even guilty of it to an extent, although I didn't have like the 312 in my drafts or anything. I would have, I probably would drop that on Tesla. I think that he's easily worth that, given the fact he's athletic and he got good draft capital. I mean, why not? Why not, just try, take a shot on him? For sure.
All right. Make sure you're following Joseph at Quality Stats on the Twitters. Make sure you're doing that. And I'm sure as you go over there, you can find the Substack quite easily.
We'll put a link to it in the description below.
And, there's, again, one of the better models out there. Let us know if you've found a better one. And again, doesn't have draft capital in the model.
That's very important to include. It does not have draft capital, and it does not have
these post-draft capital models. Okay.
Yeah. So no capital in there, which is super impressive. So we appreciate you joining the show, Joseph.
Thank you very much for having me.
I don't know if we can call this the quality model or not, or if just Joseph's model is fine for now. But
I'm happy with whatever. I'm terrible at naming things.
Yeah, so. A lot of great information over there, and you're missing out if you're not following him on the Twitter.
What's the animal's name?
Oh, capybara.
It's like I don't know. Is your nickname?
It's a very friendly animal. It's a very friendly animal. So
that resembles a dog. We're getting somewhere towards a dog score here. I don't know.
Jack Bech would be through the roof on a dog score.
How was a dog score though?
All right. We appreciate you tuning in. If you want more of us, you can hop on the Patreon. We get extra episodes every week. We got ADP. We got startup ADP that just came out. We're constantly mock drafting both rookies and startups. We got rookie rankings. We got dynasty rankings getting ready to be re-released after the draft here, now that we're integrating all the rookies. So lots of good stuff to check out over there. And roster reviews will be back up here real soon, and we'll be hammering out some of those. Make sure you join us live on Mondays for live stream.
Player pages.
Got tons of player pages and great information over there for all of your rookie draft pleasure. Make sure you check all that out. Until next time, that's Joseph at Quality Stats. We're the FF Dynasty. Peace.